Hi, I'm Barbara Ward from the Moffatt-Ladd House, and we are now in the green chamber of the Moffatt-Ladd House. This is one of the few rooms in the house to retain its original paint scheme, and it has a wonderful copper oxide green that was discovered on the walls and recreated in the 1970s. This room is one of my favorites, particularly because the paneling is such a wonderful expression of Georgian taste of the 1760s when the house was built, and really shows up the skill of Ebenezer Deering, the carver, who is documented as having done the carving in this room and others, including the great hall downstairs, which you may have seen earlier. This is the room that traditionally was where William Whipple, one of New Hampshire's 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence, lived with his wife, Katharine Moffatt. What I really love about William Whipple is he was a staunch patriot. He was unwavering in his support for the patriot cause, and he had no patience at all for other people who dragged their feet and weren't sure about whether to support the revolution. He was also a strong advocate for an American Navy. He felt that a Navy was needed because if we allowed the naval battles to be undertaken by privateers, they would be going out and sailing only for their own interests, taking prizes only because they could bring the goods home and sell them in port for a profit, rather than thinking about what was best for the American cause. He began his career as a captain on ships owned by his future father-in-law, John Moffatt, and he really knew the sea very well. So when he made comments about what was needed in the Navy, he really knew the capabilities of ships of certain sizes and why certain things were needed, certain types of ships were needed to fight the war properly, effectively, efficiently, and also in the time that we had to build those ships. So his letters are really, to his colleague Josiah Bartlett, are really eloquent on these points. It's amazing his unlimited optimism about the war, in spite of all the difficulties, in spite of the problems of raising money and raising troops and providing for a Navy. He was incredibly optimistic about the patriot cause. And he's constantly writing letters to Bartlett when Bartlett is starting to get depressed and just wants the war over. William Whipple is constantly trying to build him up and give him the strength to go on. And so his letters are full of pep talks, literally, to Josiah Bartlett about the need to press on and not be swayed by rumors that the British wanted to sign an early peace treaty that wouldn't allow us to have our full independence. And so he was constantly pushing for that and to keep up the enthusiasm and keep people going. So what I was going to do is just read one of his letters. In writing to Josiah Bartlett on April 23rd, 1777, he writes, "I find you have had hard work to persuade gentlemen to serve their country.
What can be the meaning of this? Do gentlemen still think it hazardous to appear in a character that will render them obnoxious to the British tyrant and his infernal tools? Or are they afraid their private interests will suffer? The day perhaps is not far off when some of these gentlemen who are now so loath to step forth will be making interest for a seat in Congress. They may be gratified for what I care. Let those who are laboring in the vineyard enjoy the blessings of domestic happiness, with the pleasing reflections that will result from a consciousness of having lent their aid when their country most wanted it. However, it seems that you have at last found 2 gentlemen who will come, and I wish they may set out as soon as possible. William Whipple."
William Whipple went on to serve as Brigadier General in the New Hampshire militia and to lead his troops to the Battle of Saratoga in 1777. He arrived at the battle right near the end, but being a member of Congress and a prominent person and a general, he was asked to be part of the group that drew up the terms for General Burgoyne's surrender to the Americans after the Battle of Saratoga. And he was also asked to accompany Burgoyne and his troops back to Cambridge, Massachusetts, where they were imprisoned and sent back to England. After that, he went on to serve in the Rhode Island campaign, and then he was asked to go back to the Continental Congress until he retired from the Continental Congress in 1779 and became very prominent in New Hampshire affairs and was also involved in the committee to establish the Navy and a number of other federal efforts. Before his really untimely death in 1785, in his diaries that he kept going back and forth from Philadelphia, he did record having debilitating headaches. He died of a stroke in 1785 while working as a circuit judge. Actually, he at that point was only 55 years old. His wife, Katharine Moffatt Whipple, was back here in the house. She was the one really in charge of carrying on what business could be done. She was working with people to rent the wharves. She was getting all the provisions that the family needed for the household. And her father at that time was now approaching 90 years old and was deaf and nearly blind, according to several letters written at the time. And so she was really the one who was solely in charge of the household. And we find it interesting that one of the things she had until the day she died was 2 spinning wheels. And like many women during the Revolution, she probably began spinning because of the fact that textiles were not available and that were boycotted by the Americans. Textiles coming from Europe and particularly from Britain, of course, were boycotted. And so the women had to spin yarn themselves that then could be woven into cloth locally.